I'm not sure if anybody has had quite the roller coaster ride that Jared Goff has had through his first 4 seasons in the NFL. I mean, first year he was a bust. Everyone thought that he was terrible. Then his second season with Sean McVay, they were able, his second season total, first season with Sean McVay, he really was able to have a breakout year and looked very good. Third season goes to the Super Bowl, but in the Super Bowl, things go absolutely terrible. They lose largely because of Goff. And then now his fourth season, things have gotten a lot worse statistically. His passer rating was over 100 in 2017 and 18, but dropped down to 86.5 in 2019. Again, passer rating, flawed stat. I say it every time I bring it up, but it can give you somewhat of an idea of what has happened. So, I mean, what happened? Has Jared Goff lost it? Well, no. I mean, obviously not. I mean, watch this play. It's a cover 4 zone, and what's going to happen right here is Cooks is going to run a deep route, and I'm just going to let this thing play. But basically, the defensive back in the middle of the field on the bottom of the screen, who's deep, he's going to basically cut in, which is going to allow for a one-on-one matchup. And watch how Goff is just going to make an absolutely perfect throw. I mean, you couldn't ask for anything better than that. If it was a foot farther or a foot shorter, it's not a completion. I mean, they needed a complete perfect throw, and not just that, but I mean, look at where he was. He was at about the 22-yard line when he threw it, and it's caught about the 15-yard line. I mean, just a monster throw. So his arm talent is clearly still there, and honestly, that's a dumb point to even bring up. Of course, his arm talent is there. The guy's 25 years old. As a quarterback, your arm talent isn't going to fall off once you reach 25. So we all knew that. So what is it? Why did he have a bad season? Well, there were a few things. I mean, I think the offensive line deteriorating was a very real thing. I mean, you could honestly make an argument that it was a top 5 offensive line 2 years ago, and then last year it was a bottom 5 offensive line. I mean, it really had that big of a jump. I'm not sure I would quite say bottom 5, but I would probably say bottom 10. I mean, honestly, it's definitely a below average offensive line, no doubt about that in my opinion. And it really can hurt you in a much bigger way sometimes. Like a play like this, it's going to be a cover 1 hole, and there's a route that's running towards the sideline that Goff likes. I mean, this is a pretty good route against this type of coverage. Tampa Bay is trying to take away the middle of the field, so a route that still has a cut in it, but it's cutting away from the middle of the field. This is something that's pretty good, and after the ball is snapped, you're going to notice that there is easily some separation right here, but there's also pressure right in Goff's face. So Goff wants to make this throw, and quite frankly, if he does make this throw and he makes it perfect, it's a touchdown. And even if it's not perfect, it's setting up a first down and goal. I mean, this is a great situation. But the problem is that he's going to get hit as he's thrown, and that turns it into an interception the other way. I mean, that's taking 7 points off the board just like that and ending your possession. I mean, that's just a huge blow. And again, could you maybe make the argument that he should have noticed the pressure right in his face and not made that throw? I think you can make that argument. I think that's fair. But also, that's a reason why this offense went from so good 2 years ago to, and not that great last year. At least definitely hit or miss, we'll say. In terms of yards per attempt last year, they've had 7.1 yards per attempt. And that kind of feels right for me. Right a little bit above average, but not that much above average, and kind of just, again, very hit or miss. They did have some moments, but definitely were a far cry from what they were 2 years ago. And listen, I don't want to sit here and pretend like none of it was Goff's fault. I mean, one thing that was a problem in the Super Bowl and cost him the Super Bowl, and is still a problem, it's been a problem his whole career, is his post-snap reads. He struggles with post-snap reads, and teams can fool him, and I feel like they maybe even tried to fool him more once it sort of came out more and more that that's what he struggles with. Like on this play, this is what we know is going to happen. We know that it's going to be man coverage. There's one safety who is deep. And so there's a Tampa Bay player who could be doing a couple of things. He could be dropping back into coverage like that, which would just be a cover 1, a traditional cover 1 hole or cover 1 robber concept. But instead what they're going to do is they're going to have him be the one who is going to be rushing the passer, and they're going to drop back Levante David into coverage, and he's going to be a lot higher up to the top of the screen than typically you would expect. And so for Goff, the receiver on the top of the screen is running a slant route to the middle of the field, which will typically work whether it's a cover 1 blitz or a cover 1 hole or cover 1 robber. But it's not going to work in this situation because David is going to be dropping so far up to the top of the screen. However, Goff just doesn't notice this, and he's going to end up throwing an interception right there just because he didn't realize that. That's a real thing. That's a real problem that he has in his game, and it really does affect him in a negative way. And it still is a problem, and until he fixes it, it's going to continue to be a problem and will probably lead to some interception. That being said, his arm talent is fantastic. I mean, that's really, why he got drafted first overall. That's how teams have been able to be successful with him, how the Rams went to back-to-back playoff appearances and went to a Super Bowl with him, is because of his arm talent. And this play is a good example. It's a cover 3 zone. They have a receiver running over the middle, so, if you can get into a gap in coverage, this can work out. And after the ball is snapped, he's kind of in a gap in coverage, I mean, there's a couple of Arizona players who are there, so keep in mind, it's not like you have a Jerome that just drops a football. You have to try to make the throw over those Arizona players, and also you can't make it too far. So there is not a big window whatsoever for Goff to make this throw. However, he does it anyways, and it works. So that's kind of what Goff can do. He can take those risky throws because he rarely throws interceptions on plays like that. Usually his interceptions are him just missing a read. That's honestly what a lot of them are. If you watched my recent Patrick Mahomes video, I kind of talked about the difference between Mahomes and someone like Baker Mayfield, of that Mahomes and Mayfield will make a lot of the same throws. The difference is just that Mahomes actually can make those throws, where Mayfield will not be as accurate on all of them, and he'll miss or just doesn't have the arm strength that Mahomes does, and nobody is as accurate and has the arm strength as Mahomes, but you get the point. Well, I feel like for Goff, it's very similar to one of those guys. I mean, you could say that he plays a decent amount like Jameis Winston. The only difference is that he's just far more accurate than Winston, and a little bit. I mean, I would actually say that their IQ is about the same, but Goff is just a much more talented thrower of the football. Like, this play is another example. It's a cover 3 zone. There's a receiver that's going to be cutting up to the top of the screen. And right after the ball is snapped, there's an opening here, but it is not a huge opening by any means. There's maybe not necessarily a mailbox he has to fit it through, but it's certainly a stop sign, and maybe not even that big of a window. However, watch how he still is able to make it really just a perfect throw. You couldn't ask for anything better than that, and it's a touchdown. Some lesser quarterbacks wouldn't make that throw, and they shouldn't, because it's a kind of a risky throw, but Goff is talented enough that he can make those throws. So, that's another thing I wanted to bring up, is that his arm talent really is. It's fantastic, which is why when he's in the right situation, he can really thrive. People can argue, well, he's not Aaron Rodgers, he's not Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, but we already knew that. I mean, we know that he's not the kind of guy who's going to completely lead a team all by himself to a Super Bowl, even if they're not that great. We know he needs some help, but so do pretty much all quarterbacks except for, 2 or 3. In fact, I would say the only quarterback right now that could take a mediocre team to a Super Bowl is Patrick Mahomes. He's the only guy. I don't think anyone else could. That's just my opinion. I think even like Russell Wilson. I mean, the last time he's gone to a Super Bowl was the Legion of Boom days. So, you need help regardless, but I don't think we should really hold that against Goff too much. One other criticism that Goff receives is that people don't like how, they'll call him a statue. He's not very great at scrambling. And I think there is some truth to that. And in today's game, where there just isn't the offensive line help that there used to be, no one wants to be an O-lineman anymore, it does become a lot more difficult. Like this play, what's going to happen is that, it's going to be a cover 1 hole, receiver running over the middle. That's where Goff wants to throw to. But right after the ball is snapped, you're going to notice a couple things. One, that there is a ton of pressure, so that's a problem right off the bat. The other thing is that the receiver that Goff wants to hit just isn't open yet. This is a 3rd down and 1, so they really want to get this first down. But Goff is able to scramble to some degree. However, off balance doesn't make a great throw. He did what he had to do. I mean, that play just was never going to work out. But I do think this was actually an okay play from Goff. I don't think that he's quite... comparing him to the guys who couldn't move of the past, of the Eli Mannings, you can even throw Phillip Rivers in there, like a Peyton Manning, some of these guys who weren't very good at moving. I think he's more mobile than those guys. Nobody is going to compare him to Lamar Jackson, right? But at the end of the day, he doesn't have to be Lamar Jackson because he has, a way of playing that works. He is a flawed quarterback, but he also has some really good things about him too. And sometimes you would rather have the quarterback who is great at, three-quarters of the aspects of being a quarterback in bad at one quarter than just a quarterback who is mediocre at everything. Because at least with Goff, in the right situation, he can go to a Super Bowl and maybe even win it. But with some guys, you wouldn't have that. So I still like Goff. I think Goff is pretty good. I am not out on Goff just yet. It takes a lot more than one disappointing season for me to be out on a guy. But that's just my opinion. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. What do you feel about Goff? Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.